I was standing in the third row at my best friend's wedding when my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. Help! I'm trapped. That's not me at the altar. My name is Tyler Morrison, and for the past 8 years, Garrett Holloway has been more than my best friend. He's been my brother, my business partner, the guy who talked me through my dad's death and celebrated with me when I landed my dream job at Microsoft. That's why I was standing there in that beautiful church, watching him marry Sienna Reeves, the incredible woman who'd finally gotten him to settle down. The phone in my pocket kept vibrating. I tried to ignore it, but something made me look. The sender's name stopped my heart. Sienna Reeves. I looked up at the bride standing next to Garrett, her veil perfectly arranged, her smile radiant beneath the soft church lighting. She looked exactly like Sienna. Same auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, same emerald green eyes that crinkled when she laughed, even the tiny scar above her left eyebrow from when we all went rock climbing last summer and she'd taken a small fall. The memory was so clear. Garrett panicking, Sienna laughing it off, saying scars tell better stories than perfect skin ever could. My hands shook as I typed back, "Where are you?" The response came instantly. "Church basement." He's been keeping me here for weeks. Please hurry. The ceremony is almost over. My girlfriend Piper noticed my distress. She leaned over, whispering, "Tyler, what's wrong?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't answer her. My eyes were fixed on the woman in white standing at the altar. The priest was saying something about the sanctity of marriage, about 2 souls becoming one, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. The bride turned slightly, catching the light from the stained glass windows, and for just a moment something felt wrong about her smile. It was too practiced, too perfect, like she'd rehearsed it in a mirror 1,000 times. Another text arrived. "Tyler, I know this sounds insane, but you have to believe me. The woman marrying Garrett isn't me. Please, I've been trying to get someone's attention for weeks. They took my phone, but I found an old burner phone hidden in the basement supplies. You're the only contact I could remember by heart." Garrett's mother, Judith, sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. But she wasn't watching her son. Her eyes were locked on the bride with an intensity that suddenly seemed less like maternal pride and more like a director watching an actress perform a crucial scene. Next to her sat Uncle Vernon, the church custodian and Judith's brother, nervously fidgeting with his keyring. The bride began her vows, her voice carrying clearly through the church. "Garrett, from the moment I met you at that medical conference in Chicago, I knew you were different from anyone I'd ever met." The words were right, the voice was right, but as I watched, I noticed she was holding her bouquet in a death grip, her knuckles white beneath her lace gloves. The real Sienna was allergic to lily pollen, yet her bouquet was full of white lilies. She should have been sneezing, her eyes watering, but instead she stood perfectly still, perfectly composed. My phone lit up again. I can hear the organ music through the vents. Is the ceremony happening? God, Tyler, he's sick. They're all sick. His sister didn't die in that car accident 5 years ago. She's alive and she's completely insane. That's her up there wearing my dress, living my life, marrying the man I thought I loved. The words hit me like a physical blow. Briar Holloway, Garrett's twin sister whose death had supposedly destroyed him. I remembered the anniversary every year, how Garrett would disappear for days, returning hollow-eyed and drunk. The photographs he'd shown me of a beautiful girl who looked so much like him, it was uncanny. The way he'd sometimes start to say, "Briar thinks," before catching himself and changing the subject. "Ask her about the moon jellyfish," the next text read. "That night in Monterey Bay, just the 3 of us. She won't know. Only the real Sienna would know what happened when you got stung. Please, Tyler. I've been down here listening to them rehearse my life story with her for weeks. They've taught her everything, except the things only we know." The priest was asking about objections now, That traditional moment everyone jokes about but no one ever expects to matter. My throat felt like sandpaper. Piper grabbed my hand, probably thinking I was just emotional about my best friend getting married. She had no idea I was standing at the edge of a nightmare, watching what might be the most elaborate deception I'd ever witnessed. The woman in the wedding dress turned to face the congregation, her smile bright and perfect, and absolutely wrong. Because now I saw it clearly, she was wearing Sienna's engagement ring on the wrong hand. The real Sienna always wore it on her right hand because of an old volleyball injury that made her left ring finger sensitive to pressure. This woman wore it on her left like she'd seen in movies, like someone acting out what they thought a bride should be. "Tyler, please." One final message appeared. "I know you're scared. I know this seems impossible, but you're the only one who really knows me. You're the only one who can stop this." The basement door is behind the confessional booths. Uncle Vernon has a key. He brings me food, but he doesn't know I'm a prisoner. They told him I'm sick, that I need isolation to recover from a breakdown. I'm running out of time. Once they're married, Garrett's going to make me disappear forever. I stood up. Every eye in my row turned to me. Piper tugged at my jacket, but I pulled away. The bride and groom were about to kiss to seal this twisted ceremony. Garrett's eyes met mine across the church, and for just a second I saw something flash across his face. Not surprise, not confusion, fear. He knew I knew. And that's when I realized the woman I'd been texting wasn't lying. My best friend, the man I'd trusted with my life, was standing at that altar committing the ultimate betrayal. Not just against Sienna, not just against everyone in this church, but against every moment of friendship we'd ever shared. The kiss was happening now, sealing the unholy union between a man I thought I knew and a woman who wasn't supposed to exist. The congregation erupted in applause. Judith Holloway stood, tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of relief. They thought they'd gotten away with it. They were wrong. 8 years ago, I met Garrett Holloway during freshman orientation at Michigan State. I was struggling to connect my laptop to the dorm Wi-Fi when this guy bounded into my room like a golden retriever, all confidence and easy smiles. "You must be Tyler," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Garrett, your roommate." Fair warning, I snore, I'm terrible at mornings, and I'll probably eat your food, but I make up for it by being devastatingly charming and occasionally funny. That was Garrett. He could walk into any room and own it within seconds. While I spent Friday nights debugging code or gaming, he was at every party, knew every person worth knowing, and somehow still managed to pull decent grades. By sophomore year, he was student body president. By junior year, captain of the lacrosse team. The kind of guy whose future seemed written in the stars from day one. Our friendship shouldn't have worked. I was the introvert who preferred algorithms to alcohol, hackathons to house parties. But Garrett had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in his world when he focused on you. When my dad died suddenly during junior year, Garrett drove me home to Detroit, sat through the funeral, and handled all my classes for 2 weeks. "That's what brothers do," he said, and I believed him. After graduation, Garrett went into pharmaceutical sales while I joined a startup that eventually got acquired by Microsoft. We stayed close despite our different paths. Weekly beer nights became monthly, then quarterly, but the bond never weakened. When Garrett called 2 years ago, breathless with excitement, I knew something had changed. "I met her, Ty, the one." I know that sounds insane coming from me, but I'm serious. Her name was Sienna Reeves, and she was everything Garrett wasn't. Where he was flash and charm, she was substance and warmth. A pediatric nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital, she'd attended the same medical conference where Garrett was pushing his company's new insulin delivery system. She called out our sales rep for misleading statistics. Garrett laughed during that first conversation. Right there, in front of 200 people. I knew I had to meet her. Their relationship moved fast but felt right. Within 6 months, Sienna had moved into Garrett's downtown apartment. Within a year, they were engaged. I'd never seen Garrett so grounded, so genuinely happy. Sienna brought out something real in him, something I'd only glimpsed during our late-night college conversations when his guard was down. The three of us became close. Sunday brunches at Pike Place Market, Seahawks games in the fall, that memorable weekend in Monterey Bay where I got stung by a moon jellyfish and Sienna had to pee on my leg while Garrett filmed it, all of us laughing so hard we couldn't breathe. She fit into our friendship like she'd always been there, the missing piece we didn't know we needed. But there were moments that felt off, looking back. Garrett's mother, Judith, seemed to hover whenever Sienna was around. She'd make comments about Sienna's appearance, her mannerisms, always phrased as compliments but feeling like assessments. "You have such delicate features, dear. Have you ever considered modeling?" Or, "Your voice has such a lovely tone. You should record yourself reading poetry." Then there was the subject of Briar, Garrett's twin sister who'd supposedly died 5 years earlier. Garrett rarely spoke about her, but when he did, his stories would sometimes conflict. Once he said she died instantly in the crash. Another time, he mentioned she was in a coma for 3 days. When I pointed out the discrepancy, he shut down completely, didn't speak to me for a week. The wedding planning intensified everything. Judith took control like a general commanding an army. Every detail had to be perfect, from the flower arrangements to the reception seating chart. Sienna seemed overwhelmed, but went along with it. "It's important to Garrett," she'd say, though I noticed she'd started looking tired, stress showing in the dark circles under her eyes. The rehearsal dinner last night should have been my first real warning. Sienna seemed different, almost robotic in her interactions. When I mentioned the moon jellyfish story, she laughed, but didn't add her usual punchline about still feeling guilty for having to pee on me. When Piper complimented her engagement ring, Sienna looked at it like she was seeing it for the first time. "Pre-wedding jitters," Garrett explained, his arm tight around her waist. "She hasn't been sleeping well." Now, standing in St. Augustine's church, watching what I thought was my best friend's perfect wedding, all those small oddities clicked into place like pieces of a horrifying puzzle. The bride at the altar wasn't suffering from pre-wedding jitters. She wasn't Sienna at all, and somewhere beneath our feet the real Sienna was trapped, desperately hoping someone would believe her impossible story. The phone in my hand felt like it was burning through my palm. Each new message from Sienna made my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. The ceremony continued around me, but everything felt surreal, like I was watching it through frosted glass. "Tyler, I need you to understand what happened," her next message read. 3 weeks ago, I went for my final dress fitting at Judith's house. She insisted on doing it there instead of the boutique. Said she had a family seamstress who could make last-minute alterations. Garrett drove me over, kissed me goodbye in the driveway, said he had to run to the office. That's the last real memory I have before waking up in this basement. The priest was reading from Corinthians now, something about love being patient and kind. The woman pretending to be Sienna stood perfectly still, her hand resting in Garrett's. From where I sat, I could see her thumb rhythmically tapping against his palm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Like she was counting, keeping time, reminding herself of something. "They drugged my tea," the next message continued. "When I woke up, I was in this room. Clean, furnished, but definitely a prison. Judith was there with another woman who looked exactly like me. Not similar. Exactly like me. She'd dyed her hair, done something to her eyebrows, even had contact lenses to match my eye color. Judith introduced her as Briar, and my blood went cold. Piper was tugging at my sleeve now. "Tyler, seriously, what's wrong? You're shaking." I showed her the phone screen. Her face went white as she read the messages. "This can't be real," she whispered. "Look at her wedding ring placement," I whispered back. "Sienna wears it on her right hand. Always has." Piper's eyes snapped to the altar. I saw the exact moment she recognized the truth. Her hand found mine and squeezed hard. Another text arrived. Garrett came down that first night. He was crying, Tyler. Actually crying. Said he never meant for it to go this far. That Briar had attempted suicide when she found out about the engagement. She'd been institutionalized since the accident she caused 5 years ago, the accident that killed 3 college students. Judith got her released into private care, hired psychiatrists, tried everything. But Briar became obsessed with me, started believing she was me. The congregation stood for a hymn. I remained seated, my legs unable to support me. Vernon, the church custodian, was watching me from his position near the back wall. His face showed concern, but something else too. Guilt? Fear? He kept touching the key ring on his belt, his fingers finding one particular key over and over. The plan was supposed to be simple. Sienna's message continued. Briar would stand in for the ceremony to fulfill some sick fantasy, then they'd send her back to Switzerland for treatment. I was supposed to be sedated, wake up after the reception, and Garrett would tell me I'd had a breakdown, that I'd imagined being locked up. They had a psychiatrist ready to diagnose me with acute stress disorder. Papers already drawn up. The hymn ended. Everyone sat. The woman at the altar turned to face Garrett, and I caught her profile. It was perfect. Too perfect. Real faces aren't. Symmetrical, but hers was. Like she'd studied Sienna's face in a mirror for hours, days, weeks, learning exactly how to hold her mouth, how to tilt her head, how to smile with just the right amount of teeth showing. "But Briar doesn't want to go back," the next text read. "I heard them arguing last night. She wants to stay. To live my life permanently. She knows about my work at the hospital, my patients, my colleagues. She's memorized my routines, my passwords, my friends' names. She even knows about the birthmark on my shoulder and the way I take my coffee." Garrett was speaking now, his vows flowing smoothly. "Sienna, you saved me from myself. Before you, I was lost, playing a role I thought I was supposed to play. You showed me what real love looks like." The irony was suffocating. He was literally talking about playing roles while his sister played the ultimate role right in front of everyone. "Tyler, there's something else." A new message appeared. "I'm not the first." I found scratches on the walls down here, initials, RP 2019, KL 2021. I think they've done this before. I think Briar has been practicing being other people, and Garrett and Judith have been enabling her. My mind raced. Rachel Patterson, Garrett's girlfriend who'd suddenly moved to Europe in 2019. Kendall Liu, who'd supposedly ghosted him in 2021 after her family intervened. Were they real departures or were they victims too? The officiant raised his hands. "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence stretched. Piper's hand tightened on mine. This was it. The moment where I had to choose between the friend I thought I knew and the truth screaming at me from my phone. I started to stand, but Garrett's eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that froze me mid-motion. He gave the slightest shake of his head, and his lips formed a single word. "Please." For a heartbeat, I wavered. 8 years of friendship battled against the desperate messages on my phone. Then I sat back down, but not in defeat. I needed a better plan than making a scene that no one would believe. The ceremony continued, moving into the prayer portion. As 200 heads bowed in unison, I leaned over to Piper. "I'm going to the bathroom," I whispered. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, call 911. "Tyler, let me come with you," she whispered back. "No, stay here. Film everything on your phone. We need evidence." I slipped out of the pew and moved quietly toward the back of the church. My footsteps echoed slightly on the marble floor, but the organ music covered most of the sound. In the vestibule, I spotted Vernon polishing brass candlesticks with methodical precision, the way someone does when they're trying to keep their mind off something troubling. "Vernon," I called out softly. He jumped, nearly dropping the candlestick. "Mr. Morrison, you startled me. Shouldn't you be inside? They're about to exchange rings." I moved closer, noting how his hand instinctively went to his key ring. "Vernon, I need your help. Judith asked me to get something from the basement. She said it was urgent for the reception surprise." His weathered face creased with confusion. "During the ceremony? That doesn't sound like Mrs. Holloway. She specifically told me no one was to go downstairs today. Said there was water damage from last week's rain." "It's Garrett's old lacrosse jersey," I said, thinking quickly, "from his championship game. Judith wants to display it during the father-son dance. She forgot to bring it up earlier and doesn't want to leave her seat." Vernon studied my face. I could see the war playing out behind his eyes. He was a good man, I realized, caught up in something he didn't fully understand. "Mrs. Holloway has been acting strange lately," he said quietly, "having me deliver food to the basement 3 times a day. Said it was for the homeless ministry, but we don't have a homeless ministry. And sometimes, late at night when I'm cleaning, I hear crying from down there." "Vernon," I said carefully, "I think you know something's not right. I need you to trust me. Give me the keys, and if anyone asks, you never saw me." His hand trembled as he removed the key ring from his belt. "Third key from the left, the brass one. Mr. Morrison, if someone's in trouble down there, you should know that Mrs. Holloway's brother, my boss at the diocese, he's involved too. Whatever this is, it goes deep." I took the keys, their weight heavier than just metal. "Stay here. Act normal. If Judith comes looking for you, you're just doing your job." The door to the basement was exactly where Sienna had described, behind the ornate confessional booths. The wood was old, painted over so many times that the keyhole was nearly obscured. The key turned with difficulty, like it hadn't been used in years, though I knew that wasn't true. The stairs descended into darkness. I used my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through air thick with dust and something else. Fear. The smell of fear was down here, mixed with industrial cleaner and old stone. The basement was larger than I expected, with corridors branching off in multiple directions. Storage rooms, old Sunday school supplies, forgotten donations molding in corners. "Sienna?" I called out softly. A muffled response came from my left. I followed the sound past rooms full of broken pews and stacked hymn books until I found a door marked Archives. It was newer than the others, with a modern deadbolt that looked recently installed. The 5th key on Vernon's ring fit perfectly. The door opened to reveal a fully furnished living space that made my stomach turn. This wasn't a temporary holding cell. This was a carefully prepared prison. A twin bed with hospital restraints. A small refrigerator humming in the corner. A portable toilet. A calendar on the wall with days crossed off in red. 23 days. She'd been down here 23 days. Sienna was sitting on the bed, her wrists raw and bleeding where she'd managed to work one hand free from the leather restraints. She was thinner than I remembered, her hair unwashed, wearing what looked like hospital scrubs, but her eyes were clear, fierce, alive. "Tyler," she gasped, "you came." I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. I rushed to her, working on the remaining restraint. "We need to get you out of here. Now." "No," she said, grabbing my arm with her free hand. "First, you need to know everything. There's a filing cabinet in the corner. Inside are records of other women, Breyer's practice runs. Some of them are still alive, Tyler. They're in facilities across the country, diagnosed with various mental illnesses, discredited, destroyed. Garrett and Judith have been protecting Breyer for years, feeding her obsession instead of treating it." The sound of footsteps on the stairs made us both freeze. Heavy, deliberate steps that could only belong to one person. I positioned myself between Sienna and the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Garrett appeared in the doorway, still in his tuxedo, his boutonniere slightly crushed. His face was a masterpiece of controlled anguish. I knew you'd figure it out, Ty. You always were too smart for your own good. Garrett, what have you done? I kept my body between him and Sienna, acutely aware that my best friend was now my potential adversary. You don't understand. Garrett's voice cracked, and for a moment I saw the boy I'd met in college, scared and trying to hide it. Briar didn't die in that accident. She caused it. 3 teenagers from her rival sorority, dead. She ran them off the road because they wouldn't let her pledge. Mom and I have been hiding her ever since, moving her from facility to facility, hiring the best doctors money could buy. Sienna stood up behind me, her voice steady despite everything. So, you just gave her my life? Like I'm some interchangeable part in your sick family drama? It was supposed to be temporary, Garrett shouted, his composure finally breaking. Just through the ceremony. Mom is dying, Tyler. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. 3 months to live, maybe less. All she wanted was to see both her children married, happy, normal. After today, Briar was going back to the facility in Switzerland. They have a new treatment program there, experimental but promising. And what about me? Sienna's voice was ice. Was I supposed to just disappear? Garrett couldn't meet her eyes. We were going to say you had a psychotic break, that the wedding stress triggered something. By the time you recovered and were released, Briar would be gone, and we could start over. I had papers drawn up, a psychiatrist ready to sign off. It would have worked. Would have? I caught the past tense immediately. Garrett's face darkened. Briar doesn't want to go back. She's convinced herself that she is Sienna now. She knows everything about you. He looked at Sienna. Your childhood memories, your work schedule, your patients' names. She spent 3 weeks down here with you, studying you, becoming you. She's better at being you than you are. That's insane, I said. Yes, Garrett laughed bitterly. That's exactly what it is. Insane. My whole family is insane, Tyler. My mother, who covered up murders to protect her daughter. My sister, who thinks she can steal people's lives. And me, who went along with all of it because I'm too much of a coward to stand up to them. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from above. Multiple sets moving fast. Garrett's face went pale. No, the ceremony should still be going. Piper's voice rang out from the stairs. Tyler, the police are here. Relief flooded through me. My brilliant girlfriend hadn't waited. She'd called for help the moment I left. 2 officers appeared behind her, hands on their weapons, assessing the scene. Behind them came more footsteps, chaotic and urgent. Everyone stay calm, the lead officer said. We received a report of a possible kidnapping. But before anyone could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway. The bride, still in Sienna's wedding dress, her veil torn away. Briar Holloway stood there, and for the first time I could see the difference. Her eyes were wrong. Not the color or the shape, but something behind them. A hollowness, a desperate hunger that no amount of mimicry could hide. You ruined it, she said to me, her voice still pitched perfectly to match Sienna's. It was perfect. I was perfect. Everyone believed I was her. Briar, sweetheart, come back upstairs. Judith's voice came from behind the officers. She pushed through, still in her mother of the groom dress, her face a mask of desperation. We can fix this. We always fix this. No, Mother, Briar said, laughing in a way that made everyone step back. It's over. Don't you see? The performance is ruined. The audience knows the truth. She turned to Sienna. You want your life back? Take it. It's boring anyway. All those sick children, all that virtue and kindness. It's exhausting being you. Briar, Garrett started moving toward his sister, but she held up a hand. Did you tell them about Rachel? About Kendall? About the others? Briar's smile was terrible. I've been so many people I sometimes forget who I started as. But they're all still here, she tapped her temple, living in my head, a whole crowd of stolen lives. The officers moved in then, one approaching Briar carefully while the other kept everyone else back. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." "I'll come," Briar said simply. "But first, Garrett needs to tell Tyler the truth." The whole truth. About why he really chose Sienna. "Tell him, brother." Garrett's face crumbled. "Because she looked like someone Briar could become. Because Mom saw her picture and said she was perfect. Because I'm so broken that I fell in love with someone my sister had already marked as a target." The confession hung in the air like poison. Everything about the last 2 years suddenly recontextualized into something monstrous. 3 months later, I sat in my favorite coffee shop in Seattle, watching the rain streak down the windows. The barista knew my order by heart now. Large dark roast, no room, and always the corner table where I could see both exits. Trust issues, my therapist called it. I called it learning from experience. The news coverage had finally died down. The wedding deception, they'd called it. Though that felt too simple for something so twisted. Garrett got 7 years for false imprisonment and conspiracy. His lawyer tried to argue for temporary insanity, psychological manipulation by his family, but the jury saw through it. 23 days of holding someone captive in a basement couldn't be explained away. Briar was remanded to a high-security psychiatric facility in Maryland. During her evaluation, she'd cycled through 3 different personalities, each one a perfect mimicry of her victims. Rachel Patterson, Kendall Lou, and Sienna. The psychiatrists said she had a rare form of dissociative identity disorder combined with something they'd never seen before. An ability to completely absorb and replicate other people's identities. She wasn't just pretending to be them. In her mind, she became them. Judith died 2 weeks after the arrest. The cancer took her quickly once the stress hit. She never got her perfect family wedding, never saw her children happy and normal. Vernon found her in the church, clutching a photo of Garrett and Briar as children, back when the matching twins were just kids with their whole lives ahead of them, before everything went wrong. The door chimed, and Sienna walked in, shaking rain from her umbrella. She looked healthier now, had gained back the weight she'd lost, but her eyes carried a wariness that hadn't been there before. She spotted me and made her way over, carrying a box I recognized as coming from Garrett's apartment. "Last box," she said, sitting down. His lawyer finally released the rest of my things. "How are you doing?" I asked, though it felt inadequate. "I start my new job at Portland Children's Hospital next week. Figured a fresh start in a new city would help." She pulled out a coffee mug from the box, one that said, "World's Best Nurse," that Garrett had given her last Christmas. She stared at it for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. "The prosecutor says I have a strong civil case. Emotional distress, false imprisonment, theft of identity. My lawyer thinks we could get millions. Are you going to pursue it?" She shook her head. "What would be the point? Judith's dead. Garrett will be in prison. Briar's permanently institutionalized. There's no victory here, Tyler, just survivors trying to figure out how to move forward." Piper arrived then, kissing my cheek before sitting down. She'd been my rock through all of this, the one who'd had the presence of mind to call 911 when I'd been too focused on being the hero. "Any word from him?" she asked. "Garrett? His lawyer says he doesn't want visitors, doesn't want to see anyone from his old life." "Can you blame him?" Sienna asked. Everything about his life was a lie, even his grief over Briar's death. 5 years of mourning someone who was alive the whole time, locked away in psychiatric facilities while he and Judith pretended she was dead. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. "Tyler, it's me. The real Garrett. Not the person who stood at that altar. Not the son who obeyed his mother's sickness, but your friend from MSU. The guy who drove you home when your dad died. That person was real, even if everything else was a lie. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Prison is almost a relief." Finally, I don't have to pretend anymore. I showed the message to Sienna and Piper. We sat in silence for a moment, processing the weight of it. "Are you going to respond?" Piper asked. I thought about 8 years of friendship, about late-night study sessions and championship games and being each other's best man at weddings that would never happen now, about the moment I chose to believe Sienna's texts over the evidence of my own eyes, about how sometimes the people we love most are capable of the deepest betrayals. I deleted the message. "Some stories don't deserve an epilogue," I said. Sienna reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You saved my life, Tyler. When that text came through, you didn't hesitate. You chose to believe me when it would have been easier to ignore it." "Anyone would have done the same," I said. "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't have." The wedding continued for another 10 minutes after you left your seat. 200 people sat there and watched a performance, and not one of them questioned it. You did. You acted. That's the difference between being a bystander and being a hero. Vernon still maintains St. Augustine's Church. He added new locks to the basement doors and refuses to go down there alone. Sometimes he sends me messages, little updates about his life, about finding peace after being an unwitting accomplice to something so dark. He's started a legitimate homeless ministry now, using the space that once held Sienna prisoner to help people who actually need shelter. If this story teaches anything, it's that evil doesn't always look like evil. Sometimes it wears a mother's love, a brother's loyalty, a family's desperate attempt to appear normal. The warning signs are there if we're willing to see them. The controlling behavior, the stories that don't quite match, the intensity that feels like love but is really possession. But it also teaches us about courage, about trusting our instincts when everything seems wrong, about choosing to act when it would be easier to stay silent. Sienna took a massive risk sending those texts, banking on to recognize the truth. I took a risk believing her. Piper took a risk calling the police. Even Vernon, in his small way, took a risk giving me those keys. The truth is, we all have moments when we see something wrong and have to decide whether to act. Most of the time, we convince ourselves it's not our problem, that we must be misunderstanding, that someone else will handle it. But sometimes there is no one else. Sometimes you're the only one who can make a difference. I think about those initials Sienna found carved in the basement walls, RP 2019, KL 2021. Other women whose lives were stolen, who weren't as lucky as Sienna. I hope wherever they are, if they're still alive, they know that their truth finally came out. That someone believed them, even if it was too late. As we left the coffee shop that day, Piper asked me if I regretted losing Garrett as a friend. "I lost him long before that wedding," I said. "Maybe I never really had him at all? But what I gained was more valuable. The knowledge that when it mattered most I chose truth over comfort, right over easy, and someone else's safety over my own friendship. That's all any of us can do when faced with the unthinkable. We can choose to act. We can choose to believe. We can choose to be the person who doesn't look away. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps these important stories reach more people. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will leave you speechless. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And remember, sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that teach us the most about human nature, both its darkness and its light. Comment below if you've ever had a moment when you had to choose between comfortable lies and difficult truths. Until next time, stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to speak up when something doesn't feel right.